Hello. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to be with all of you guys. I'm like Kirill, Mauricio. So the global payment system is inefficient in general, and it costs more to economically disadvantaged people. And tbDEX offers an innovative messaging protocol that aims to make transfer worldwide more inclusive, more equal, efficient, and reliable. That's what we are going to discuss, Emily, Kirill, and Mauricio. I'll start with Emily. I'll ask you to describe tbDEX and tell us how it will help the payment system to be more efficient at the end of the day, especially for Latin America and Brazil. I'd like to hear your thoughts about our environment.
Absolutely. So tbDEX is an open protocol that makes moving value around the world much more efficient and streamlined. And the key to this is it makes moving value across borders more streamlined. And it also makes converting and living between the world of traditional banking and fiat systems, cash, as well as digital currencies such as Bitcoin and stablecoin more accessible to people because it allows people to bridge these two worlds and benefit from both. You mentioned global payments, and I have a bit of a controversial statement, which is that I think global payments as a term is a lie. All of these global payment systems are inherently domestic. And many of them, including the ACH system in the US, were built decades and decades ago. Consumer expectations have changed. And there are many countries, including Brazil, that have innovated in incredible ways. Yeah. The fact that Pix can make sending money in Brazil free and instant is incredible. SPAY in Mexico has been an incredible innovation. Now, the challenge is the minute you try to send money across borders, that's where it's really, really difficult, even if you live in a country like Brazil that now has Pix. And too many people still need to send money, whether that's sending money home to family for remittances, or whether that's running your business, right? If you run a business that crosses borders, you are often paying suppliers in another country to buy goods. You are often paying employees in other countries to manufacture goods and do the work for you. And then you're collecting payments from global customers. And today, these systems are very, very broken, these cross-border payments. They're inefficient. Oftentimes, it's faster to drive a car with cash to deliver money between two countries than it is to actually move bits. And this is where we hear time and again that it's easier to move goods from China to LATAM than it is to move funds from China to LATAM, which is just incredible. And so we're solving this problem with tbDEX by building a standard open source protocol that anyone can use for free and plug into to discover liquidity, to find counterparties, to move value. And ultimately, we think this is going to be incredibly empowering for people in LATAM, where many of the population is still unbanked. Globally, it's 1.7 billion people. In LATAM, it's close to 40 million people who don't have access to financial services or don't have access to any identity to access financial services. And when you look at countries, it's often the unbanked population can be as high as 40%. If you talk about Peru, Colombia, and even in countries that have a lot of progress, it's in the double digits. And so we see this protocol being this democratizing technology that enables anyone to connect with the global economy, benefit from new technologies such as Bitcoin and stablecoin that can help you move money and settle money much more instantly. And ultimately, that leads to financial and economic empowerment.
I like the point of cross-border and global payments. This is an interesting thing to consider. Mauricio, when we come up to the business to consumer perspective, how these kind of things can affect the behavior?
Yeah, thank you, Andre. Well, if you think about the remittances industry and cross-border payments or global payments, in Latin America alone, there's over 150 billion processed every year to different countries. The volume has increased 25x in the last 20 years. Mexico alone, which is the largest corridor, has grown 20x since NAFTA was signed in 1994. And yet, most of these payments today are still done cash to cash, which is crazy to think that an industry that's exploding in such a magnitude has still not been truly digitalized, and it's so prehistoric, really. And when I say cash to cash, it really is someone in the US going to a little retailer or mom and pop shop, depositing cash, and then someone else in Mexico or Guatemala or whatever getting cash in another physical location, which is, of course, ineffective, it's dangerous, it's expensive, it's slow in terms of the time that you take to receive money. And so we're super excited to finally start working on a protocol with TBD and the tbDEX protocol, where you can change that experience from the consumer from a very ineffective process that's cash to cash into one that's instant, that's cheaper, it is transparent, it is faster. And not only that, but now you can also access an ecosystem of products and services where instead of picking up cash in a retail location, you can get that into your digital banking account with Bankaya or other institutions, and you have access to credit, to buy now, pay later, to payments, to cashback, and other products and services. So really, the timing for the disruption of this industry is now. It is crazy to think that something that has grown 20x in the last couple of decades is still so archaic and so old in how it's executed, but we're trying to change that.
Kirill, I asked him about B2C environment, and now I'll ask you about B2B. What are the challenges of having a smooth and efficient cross-border process, and the impact on B2B companies and transactions?
Yeah, no. So we're processing, hundreds of millions of dollars a month, billions of dollars a year in B2B payments. And we can use legacy rails like Swift. We can also use new rails like stablecoins. The issue that both of them have downsides to them, right? And so when you think about Swift, for example, Swift is a network that connects banks, right? So there's a network of correspondent banks that essentially pass information to each other. Number one problem is that doesn't include any sort of identity or compliance data, right? It's purely the payment information. And the way that it's done, and I actually worked in banks. I was in bank in the US. And so the way that it's done sometimes, it's really archaic, right? So for example, if Mauricio here, pretend he's a bank and he wanted to send money to Emily, oftentimes what happens is there's literally a fax that comes through, right? There's a human that receives that fax, they read it, they type it into a terminal, they pass a piece of paper, maybe actually to Andre, right, to go back to Emily. So this process is inefficient, it's error prone, lots of issues around that. On the other hand, you have, for example, stablecoin rails. So USDC, USDT, all these sort of things. They're great. They're super quick, super cheap, very transparent. The problem with them is that because they're new, the financial system doesn't trust them, right? So our banking partners, some of our financial partners, they need to see the compliance data that's attached to it. They need to be sure that this is, essentially clean money. And what tbDEX is doing, this is why we're integrating, this is why I like working with these guys so much, is they're actually combining the two, right? So you have a messaging protocol that's actually programmatic, that's efficient, that you don't need to pass pieces of papers around. You actually have an API you can plug into, and it's the same API for everybody. And at the same time, it also includes compliance data, identity data. So we actually know within the same transaction, essentially, where's the money coming from, what's the purpose of it, and we know that's been verified. It's regulatory compliant according to whatever regulatory regime in each country, and that creates a huge opportunity for us, I think.
Emily, at MIT Technology Review, we always say that for every complex problem, we have an elegant, simple, and wrong solution. And being different in this kind of market, it's very hard. What makes TBD different? How do you set your strategy to be different from the other solutions?
I think there's a lot of differentiating aspects of TBD and tbDEX, and we were really intentional in the design of tbDEX to ensure that it's open. I don't think there are any other payment systems in the world, certainly not at global scale, that are open. Most of these are closed permissioned networks. Like most banks can't get access to Swift.
Yeah.
And so you're working through a bunch of correspondent banks just to get access to the bank to send money. And everyone takes a cut in the middle, right? You don't even know how long it's going to take. There's no transparency about what the cost is. If anything goes wrong, you don't know where your money went, and you have to pay to find out. So the fact that we are open, and not just open, but open source, is critically important because we're building trust and we're building a global system that we want everyone to be able to participate in. And it's also simple, right? There's a lot of complexity behind solving the challenges of identity and compliance. But ultimately, we want to make it as simple for developers as use our SDKs. We've solved a lot of the really, really hard challenges around how do you apply decentralized identity and verifiable credentials to fulfill KYC, KYB processes, to prove that you're not money laundering, all of the things that bring you into institutional grade primetime payments globally, right? And to move this across borders. These SDKs are free. Anyone can use them. We're not monetizing it. The network is permissionless. So no one needs to seek permission in order to participate in the global economy, either seeking liquidity or receiving liquidity. And these are incredibly differentiating aspects about our network. I will also state that our end goal is I want my mother to be able to use this without having to understand Bitcoin, stablecoin, how the payment system works globally. With our work with Mao, like the ideal is like any abuela who wants to go to a tienda to go pick up cash just knows that she got it faster and cheaper and doesn't need to know a single thing about Bitcoin or stablecoin being the underlying rail, the complexity of the protocol. Like it's very, very simple for developers as well as for their end customers.
What is this she said about trust? I'd like to hear your thoughts about the role of trust in verifiable credentials, and does it makes what's the difference for not only the developers? Of course, it's completely different from the developer's perspective, but the end user behavior again.
Definitely, when you're thinking about financial inclusion and empowerment, trust is paramount. It really is the gateway of having a customer trust you for the first time you open a bank account, the first time you go get a government ID. And this is still a major issue in emerging economies and in LATAM. And we were speaking yesterday about, for example, all of the customers we onboard in Mexico, most of them are underserved and unbanked, and up to 20 to 30%. And the farther away you go from the cities, that percentage grows on people who do not have a government ID yet. And it used to be historically that the reason you get a government ID, it's either to open a bank account. And of course, these customers are unbanked. They don't want to open bank accounts because they don't trust the financial system, or to vote. And of course, a very large proportion of the population is not voting yet. So with tbDEX, I think it's allowing us to visualize a world where for customers who do not have an ID or a physical plastic ID, eventually they can work together with us and tbDEX for digital credentials that could be issued together with TBD and the government, and someone opening a bank account without having a voting card. So that's huge in terms of allowing customers to trust you, doing that hand-holding. That's so important when you're opening your first bank account, when you're getting a payment that someone sent from the US to Mexico or Central America or Brazil. And that's why everything is built around this concept of trust, especially with the segment that has never trusted really institutions before.
Kirill, you have a company, you are part of a company that it's a partner is in the ecosystem of tbDEX. I'd like to hear your thoughts about what can entrepreneurs in this room do to take advantage of this interface, and how can they integrate their solutions with tbDEX?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I'm sure like here in the audience, there's probably lots of developers, there's probably lots of entrepreneurs sitting right now. And so when you think about innovation, right, you think about innovation, especially in financial services. Historically, most of that innovation has been done, I would say, on the front end, right? So you kind of have a better UX, you have a better UI, you have a better mobile app, which is great, right? And there can be a lot of value that can be created this way, and many companies have done this. But there are very, very few opportunities to build essentially on a new backend, right? There are very few opportunities in financial services to essentially have a 10x advantage in terms of speed, in terms of cost, in terms of passing data around identity and verification. And so if you're looking to build, right, if you're looking to innovate in financial services, the opportunity to build on something like tbDEX that is open, that's an open standard, that you can have the SDK for yourself, essentially start working on it tonight, right? You can start coding it tonight, and you're working on top of something that is genuinely new, right? It's a genuinely new backend, essentially, that you have access to that did not exist before. That's major. Like, that's a major opportunity. And I think right now, people don't even appreciate like what can be possible to be built on top of that, especially consider use cases like trade financing. They're so slow today and so painful for every participant, right? And there's so much potential here to automate these things, to make them faster, to make them more seamless for everybody.
Emily, would like to add something about the opportunity?
Yeah, I think what we see ourselves doing is bringing the best of digital currencies and innovations in finance, such as Bitcoin and stablecoin, to everyone. You know, not just the early adopters, the technologists, the crypto bros that are speculating, but to bring true utility and to move this from an era of speculation into an area of real utility that can solve problems for the 1.7 billion people around the world that are unbanked. Many of them in LATAM. And we do that. I mean, there are other companies that are innovating in crypto, which is great, and they can also be part of the tbDEX system. But what we also recognize is you have to bridge this system with the world we live in today. You still have to pay taxes in your local fiat. You still have to pay your grocery bills and your rent in local fiat. Like, we're not yet in a native Bitcoin world or even a world where everyone can accept stablecoins. So giving people these on and off ramps globally where they can easily live in a world of either stablecoin, if you're like in Argentina or Venezuela where there's hyperinflation and you can't get access to US dollars and you really want to preserve value that's meaningful for your family. But then when you want to actually go pay your bills, you could easily bridge between the worlds of fiat and stablecoin. And the reason no one has ever done this is because it requires you to solve incredibly hard problems around compliance and trust across global jurisdictions. And our protocol doesn't dictate the level of compliance or trust, but it allows participants, no matter what country or region you're in, to be able to bridge that, which makes it an incredibly powerful tool for people to communicate, to unlock, the trade use cases, the consumer use cases, and many use cases that developers in the audience here probably can think of that we haven't even imagined yet.
Now, I'd like to ask the same question, but with different perspectives for all of you. So I'll start from Mauricio to you. Yeah. And Mauricio, how do you foresee the market, especially from the consumer perspective in 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, well, again, I think the industry is already there. The volume is there. Remittances are crucial for many, many families in LATAM. In Honduras, for example, it's 30% of GDP. In Mexico, remittances are 17% of the income of families and over 15% of the government budget. So the opportunity is already there. Where I see this moving is truly where you're digitalizing the payment sector and all the infrastructure behind that today is still very, very old. It's inefficient and it's not benefiting consumers into something where eventually through open source and the tbDEX protocol, anyone in the US or anywhere can build technology or apps that connect into the protocol and can send cross-border payments instantly. And you also have the opportunity to bring the data and ownership of your own credentials to consumers through the verifiable credentials in the future. So I think this industry is going to be disrupted. There's no doubt. It's incredible that it hasn't been disrupted yet, given the importance and how much it's exploded in the last few years. But ultimately, what this means is better financial services and more financial inclusion for consumers.
Kirill, the same questions, but with a B2B perspective. What's going to be different in 5 to 10 years?
Yeah. So I think actually building up on what Emily said in the beginning, right? Essentially today, cross-border payments are a little bit of a lie, right? They don't actually move a lot of the time literally across borders. But then you have situations where businesses, I know this because we have many clients who are, a company in Mexico that's buying parts for their manufacturing in Mexico, from China, shipping those parts to Mexico. They have employees in Colombia. Right now, they're having extreme difficulties moving funds, right? More painful than moving the actual physical parts around. And so if you think ahead, maybe 3, 4, 5 years from now, I think what's going to happen is that a couple of things actually going to happen. So first of all, we will have true cross-border payments where the funds will actually move, from Mexico to China to Colombia natively and directly, right? Because that's not happening today. Today, if you want to move funds from Mexico to Colombia, you actually have to go to the US, right? So you go MXN, USD to COP. It's painful. It takes a long time. It's expensive. I think this will go away, right? And you'll be able to actually connect directly. So that's number one. Number two, I think when this happens, it will become invisible. right? So today, businesses, our clients, I know, again, they care a lot about, is it Swift? How much is my transaction fee? How much is my FX fee? How long before my wire actually gets to my recipient? All of these sort of things, right? When you solve these problems, they actually stop caring about this, and they can just okay, I'm sending money to my employee in Colombia. It gets there instantly. I can focus on my actual business. I can hire more people, right? I can build more things. And so I think in a way, people will actually start thinking about this less and using it more. Hopefully that makes sense. Cool.
Emily, so we will finish with your thoughts.
Yes.
Not only about cross-border payments, but also with tbDEX. When is going to be tbDEX?
Yeah. So, my prediction is in 5 to 10 years, our language is going to change. We're no longer going to say cross-border payment or international remittance. I'm just going to say, pay me, Mao, because all of this complexity and challenge will be abstracted away. I mean, imagine if to send an email to Mexico or to send an email to you in Boston, I had to first figure out, how do I do this? How do I have to, and how much is it going to cost? And how long is it going to take? I don't know how long it's going to take to get to Mexico because it's being routed through 5 other countries and it might not get there. Communications is seamless globally. Payment should be the same way. We think this is the first major step to do that. We're very excited to do it, but it requires all of us to do it together. We're not doing this in a proprietary or bespoke way. We're doing it in an open way, and it's only going to be possible if everyone is a participant of it, if everyone contributes to the open source code, if everyone buys into this, if others join our network, whether you're a wallet or a developer, a traditional business, or a business like Mao and Kirill's. And so we're really excited to share this. We can't do this alone. And we actually have a masterclass later today at 2:30 in I think room A with our head of developer relations, who's actually going to help people actually get started on tbDEX and seek liquidity or offer liquidity, which is really exciting.
So I would say that's it for today, but that's not it. So you have the masterclass today. It's going to be cool. So for now, thank you so much. Emily, Kirill, Mauricio, thank you guys for being here. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.